tonight for this webinar in our Fertility Network Trying to Conceive series. As an organisation, we're here to offer free advice, support and understanding to anyone that's affected by fertility issues. Tonight, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Victoria Smith again. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Heather. Hello, everybody.
For those of you who regularly join us, you'll recognise Victoria as she recently presented another webinar giving us general information about the food you need when you're trying to conceive. However, tonight she's going to dig just a little bit deeper into some specific common female health imbalances and how nutritional therapy can address these. Now, the first part of this webinar tonight will be Victoria's presentation. But this will be closely followed by our second part, which will be a short Q&A session once she's finished, where we'll discuss any questions submitted by you. Now, if you want to submit a question, all you've got to do is hover your cursor down at the bottom of your toolbar and a Q&A function should appear. Just select that function and then select Anonymous to prevent the accidental disclosure of your personal details, as this session will be recorded for others to watch later. Now, I'm sure as you listen, you're going to have many questions to ask, so please just type them in as you think of them, and we'll come back to them at the end when we're ready. I think we're ready to hand over to you now to start your presentation, Victoria.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
Have fun.
Thank you. Right, I'll just swap over. There we go. So, thank you very much for having me again, and for everybody for joining me for this webinar called, which tonight is actually called Using Nutritional Therapy to Help Optimize Your Fertility. So, let's make a start. So this is just a brief sort of overview of what I'm going to be discussing tonight. I'm going to start a little bit with my story, and then just talk briefly about, what are the benefits of good nutrition, and then what actually stops us from, seeking help with our nutrition and lifestyle. And then I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about, how do nutritional therapists actually work? Because for a lot of people, people just don't know. There are lots of other therapies that are used commonly with fertility, and nutritional therapy, I think, is one that does get overlooked a little bit. So just wanted to sort of really sort of dig deep into that for you. And then, as Heather said, I'm going to talk a little bit in some, as the time allows, really, some of the common female health conditions, and to really discuss how nutritional therapy can offer support for those conditions. Now, I just want to sort of stress at the beginning that nutritional therapy doesn't claim to treat or help, people. It doesn't offer a cure, basically. What we do is that we offer support for people to help manage their symptoms and things with some of these conditions. So I just want to sort of make that clear at the beginning. And then finally, as Heather said, we'll have some time for some questions at the end. So, okay. So, let me just move my... So this is me. And just a little bit about me. As Heather said, my name is Victoria Smith, and I'm a registered nutritional therapist, and I'm a health coach, and I have a special interest in fertility nutrition, and I really concentrate most of my work on helping women really to empower and educate them to balance their hormones and navigate their fertility journey by making the right nutrition and lifestyle choices. So a little bit about my own fertility story, and for any of you who do follow me on social media, I do talk about this quite freely, just to sort of, get the story out there and get the message out there about actually how I found nutrition helped me to improve my own fertility. And it's really been a journey of the last sort of 6 years or so. And unfortunately, it has been very bumpy along the way. Naturally, I've had, unfortunately, I had 2 ectopic pregnancies, and I've also had a miscarriage. And that really led us to have to embark on an IVF journey. So we have we were lucky enough. I have been successful twice with IVF. So, and what I really want to get across tonight within that story is that actually that the two fresh cycles I've had where we've been successful, the second one 3 years on from the first, and the second one I was 41, and we actually had a lot more success in terms of egg quality, in terms of the number of eggs that I was able to produce, the overall fertilization rate, and generally just the quality of embryos. And the only significant difference, I mean, considering I was 3 years older at that point, I can really only put this down to, essentially the power of making changes to my nutrition and lifestyle, and the preparation that I did before that cycle. So I just want to sort of, get that message across that actually, and I will talk about this later on, but, preparation is absolutely key. That's just a little bit about my background. So I just want you to know that I have been, I have certainly been where you are. And, it is a bit of a roller coaster. Oops, hang on. So what are the benefits of good nutrition? So, and where to start, basically. Really, I cannot sort of overemphasize the fact that good nutrition is absolutely foundational to good health of all areas of the body. And certainly as a sort of a knock on of that, certainly can help sort of boost our fertility and give us good fertility as well. And despite the fact that we all have to eat 3 times a day, many people are confused. It is a confusing topic about what we should be eating, and there are different fads that are going on, and there's a lot out there on social media about what we should be eating and things. But often and that can often leave people very confused about the best way to eat. And often the emphasis is often on weight loss, actually, and not on, nourishing your body with nutrient dense foods. And a lot of the people that I sort of see are really running on empty, and are exhausted and depleted in nutrients. So the question then becomes, well, how can we ask the body to actually, do this massively energetically expensive process of conception and pregnancy if we haven't got a sort of a nourished base to draw from? So finally, yes, we're all at the moment, I'm sure all of you are, in the sort of the phase of your life where fertility is very sort of key. But nutrition is not just about, good fertility. It's also, as I said, it impacts on every part of our lives and every part of our health as well. And actually, if you get your nutrition right now, that's going to sort of stand you in good stead for really having a long and sort of happy and healthy life as well. So now, I suppose this is really where the sort of the inspiration for this webinar came, because I sort of was wondering, what is actually stopping people who are embarking on their fertility journey, sort of seeking help with getting their sort of nutrition and their lifestyle choices correct, really, or as best they can. And I, having been through my own fertility journey as well, I totally sort of know that there is this sort of association between a sort of fertility support. People will quite actively seek out sort of acupuncture and reflexology as part of a fertility plan. And I mean, totally, both of those therapies are fantastic for fertility. So I don't want to sort of put any sort of negative slant on that, but it just did make me think, well, what about actually, what about people's nutrition as well? Why are people not necessarily seeing the importance of this so much as actually seeking these other therapies? And I think especially if you're going for IVF, you definitely, I've been for acupuncture myself before an IVF cycle, so I do know that there is this sort of this association that's going on. I just wondered if, you know, actually seeing a nutritionist or thinking about your nutrition is really at best seen as a luxury, and at worst seen as unnecessary. And as I said before, you know, we all have to eat. We're all, you know, there's so much information out there. We're all absolutely bombarded with it, really. And I've also heard quite a few of my clients telling me that, you know, their husbands have said to them, oh, you know how to eat, so you don't need any advice. And I totally understand the fact that, you know, budgets really are only finite when you're going for fertility treatment. There are a lot of costs involved. But I do question whether the sort of the general feeling of, well, just sort of I'm eating my 5 a day and I'm taking a prenatal supplement, you know, is this really enough? Is this enough to get you pregnant if you've been struggling beforehand? And a lot of the clients that I work with are, you know, have been eating the same things and using the same supplements for a long time. And the key really to remember is, especially if you're going for IVF, is that actually it's incredibly energetically expensive for the body. You know, you're asking the body to produce enough eggs that you know, it would take you over a year to produce that many eggs, and you're doing that within essentially a few weeks period, really. And if you haven't got the sort of the nourished base and the nutrients right, it's going to be quite hard for the body to sort of keep up with that sort of demand, really. So, you know, making sure that you prepare your body with the right nutrients is absolutely key. And I mean, I'm always saying that preparation is key. And ideally, if you have the time, you know, 3 to 6 months is absolutely ideal. If you've got longer than that, that's even better. For a lot of people, they don't have that amount of time, but just to stress that you can always make some changes, and any change that you make is going to have some impact, whether it's, you know, if you've only got a couple of weeks or so, you know, there's still things that you can do. And I suppose I just wanted to, you know, highlight this idea of that actually, I think for a lot of people, nutrition really is the missing piece in the puzzle. Okay, so just sort of generally thinking about how do actually nutritional therapists work. If you've never been to see one, or you may not know any locally or whatever, I just wanted to sort of, you know, stress the fact that we really consider the person who's sitting in front of us as an individual. They're a whole person and they're unique, and everybody comes with their own unique set of challenges. So we consider the whole picture, so not just the symptoms that are going on for that person, but the state of their current health, their family history, their general lifestyle at the moment, what environmental factors they're facing, their stress levels. And, you know, for fertility, stress is such a massive issue, really. How well are they sleeping? And then what are their personal challenges? You know, how it's all very well and good sort of giving, a lot of information to somebody, but actually helping them sort of fit those changes into their own life, really. So working with them to think about what obstacles they faced in the past, what challenges they're facing, and really what their goals are as well. So it's really addressing the person as a unique individual. So what I also wanted to really stress was that nutritional therapists, I'll mention this again at the end, but if you are thinking about working with a nutritional therapist, then you must look for somebody who is BANT member registered, and that is and as I said, I'll speak about this a bit at the end, but that basically is a level of qualification and of study that they have done. And it just gives you confidence that they are of a particular standard to then go and work with. And basically, nutritional therapists, we use evidence-based scientific research and literature at the core of everything that we do with our work. So everything is backed up by the scientific research things. So we recommend personalized nutrition and lifestyle plans. And as I said, we don't just look at the symptoms that somebody is facing, but we also look for root causes and the underlying health balances that might be affecting all parts of that person's health, including their ability to, their ability to be able to conceive or not, or maintain a healthy pregnancy. So essentially, we're sort of working as health detectives. We're sort of searching for deeper answers, really. And that can be quite helpful for some people who perhaps have sort of reached the end of the road with, just the answers that they're getting from, their sort of conventional doctors and things. So we do work, of course, we absolutely work alongside medical professionals, and we work in a complementary fashion. So as I said at the beginning, we don't promise or even suggest that we diagnose or cure conditions, but if you have been given a condition, sort of a named condition by your doctor, then we sort of work alongside GPs and other doctors to really sort of complement those doctors' recommendations. So, and finally, we promote optimal health. That's what we're looking for, is optimal health, rather than just sort of somebody fitting into the normal health range. And as I said, we really sort of support people to make changes in their lives. Okay, so just a few of the common health conditions, the female health conditions I wanted to mention this evening was sort of endometriosis and PCOS. So fairly common women's hormone health conditions. And then moving on to a couple of autoimmune conditions, so celiac disease and Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune hypothyroidism. And then looking at a couple of other things, so dysbiosis is a gut imbalance, and then of course obesity, which I'm sure that a lot of you know about already. So and what I want to look at on these conditions is actually how can nutritional therapy offer support with these conditions. So let's have a look. So the first one, so the main sort of female hormone conditions, health conditions that I've sort of come across are endometriosis and PCOS. Now, I'm sure that some of you, unfortunately, will be sort of experts in these they are very common female health conditions. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about them, but really want to sort of highlight how nutritional therapy can support these conditions. So endometriosis, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is when some of the cells of the lining of the uterus migrate out of the uterus and start sort of locating in different parts of the body, and sort of symptoms or common sort of common symptoms are things like very heavy periods, very, very painful periods, irregular bleeding, sort of general inflammation and things. So in terms of how nutritional therapy can offer support to people that have been given an endometriosis diagnosis, we really work on looking at diet and lifestyle, really, by reducing inflammation. We do that by encouraging an anti-inflammatory diet. We look at liver support. So we want the liver to be working well, because that's where old hormones are both detoxified, and then move to the gut after that for elimination. So again, we want to get the gut working well. So basically, if you're constipated and you're not sort of having a regular bowel movement, what can happen is that the old estrogens, once they've been sort of detoxified by the liver, they then sort of pass into the stool, and they should ideally be eliminated through the stool, on a regular basis. But if people are constipated, those hormones then are sort of sitting in the guts, unable to be eliminated. And then what can happen is they start getting recycled back into the body, and can cause problems with sort of estrogen imbalance and things. So endometriosis is now thought to be an immune problem with the immune system, or associated with sort of poor immune health, really. but what can also drive it is sort of high estrogen levels within the body. So the combination of helping support the immune system and also helping to get your hormones, your sex hormones in balance. So blood sugar balancing is absolutely key. That can help sort of regulate your sort of sex hormones, and reducing stress is absolutely vital. So we'd work with somebody with all of these areas. And then looking at PCOS, so I'm sure again some of you will know that it's caused by a production of excess male hormones leading to irregular periods. A lot of problems with ovulation. People often aren't ovulating if they have PCOS. The ovaries become sort of enlarged and contain multiple underdeveloped follicles. So what's happening is that then a dominant follicle isn't selected each month. And unfortunately, it can then lead to things like weight gain and facial acne and hair growing in where we don't want it, sort of male pattern hair growth sort of on the face and various places. And it's really caused by sort of abnormal hormone levels, and insulin plays a real sort of has a great part in that. So when you have high insulin in the body, that actually pushes the ovaries to produce higher testosterone levels. So in terms of how we, as a nutritional therapist, how I would work with somebody with PCOS to support them is really to sort of using nutritional support really to focus mainly on, or certainly a lot of the work is on weight loss and on weight management. Exercise is absolutely key, not only for helping weight loss, but also to help improve insulin sensitivity. We want to really be reducing the amount of sugar that person's eating, again, having a blood sugar balancing diet, and reducing inflammation with an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay, so just to sort of bring this to life a little bit, I've got a few case studies to this evening, just to sort of run through with some of these conditions. So this is a 40-year-old woman who came to see me. She'd been struggling with very irregular and very heavy periods, sort of fatigue and high stress, and was very, very much affecting her general quality of life. She felt sluggish, sort of unmotivated and very hormonal, and she'd been given a diagnosis by her doctor of adenomyosis. Now, for those of you who are not sure what adenomyosis is, it's like the sister condition to endometriosis. So whereas with endometriosis, the cells of the lining of the womb migrate to other parts of the body, in adenomyosis, the cells of the lining of the womb are actually migrating to the inside of the muscle layer of the uterine wall. So what can happen is it causes sort of swelling within the uterus. It's going to be very painful. There's a lot of inflammation, and again, there's sort of irregular bleeding. And this lady wanted to try and manage her symptoms naturally, but at the time, her cycle was usually quite short anyway. That was quite normal for her, around 23 days. But there were times of stress. She had a particularly stressful period sort of around Christmas, where there was illness in the family and work stress and a number of problems going on. And actually her period then sort of shortened to even more, and she was getting a bleed sort of every 8 to 13 days. So with that then becomes the problems of anemia as well. So the increased blood loss was causing, hence the fatigue and things. She had been able to conceive naturally, and had a 2-year-old child now. But since having had her child, her periods were, had been really sort of problematic and were massively affecting every part of her life, essentially her family life, her work, and how she sort of felt about herself as well. So how did we actually sort of go on and support this? So we did some hormone testing, which showed that she had low testosterone levels, and she also had an estrogen imbalance. Her estrogen levels were quite high. So we started addressing her diet using sort of anti-inflammatory foods, and we put her on a gut healing protocol. also had a bespoke supplement program, and really as a priority, she looked at ways that she was able to reduce stress on a daily basis. We worked on trying to improve her sleep, and worked on also trying to find ways that she could actually sort of have a bit of me time to herself every day, which is not always easy, with the demands of family and work and everything, but this was a real priority. So, and also just looking at things like environmental toxins, so reducing her exposure to plastics and chemicals, and actually starting to reduce her toxic load as well. And actually within a few weeks, within the first month, she actually was beginning to feel a lot better. Her cycle had slowly begun to lengthen, and after a few months, she even had one cycle that was 28 days long, which for her was very, very significant, really. And she also stopped she stopped having bleeds between periods as well. Pain had reduced, and generally she just felt much more positive, and less hormonal as her period approached and things. Increased energy, and she did actually, as a sort of a byproduct of all of this work, she did actually lose some weight, and ultimately she just sort of generally felt more positive about life. So this has been an ongoing a few months of work and things, but we really are seeing a lot of improvements in her hormonal health, which is fantastic. So okay, so the two conditions that I really wanted to sort of go into in a little bit more detail, which I sort of feel are two sort of very common conditions that actually are not that widely investigated, and they're particularly autoimmune conditions. So the first one is celiac disease, and what I want to sort of say is that perhaps it may even just bring up more questions than answers. But I want you just to be aware of the current thinking that's out there, and give you this information, and really urge you to act as your own advocate on your fertility journey. So celiac disease, and I'm sure a lot of you will know already, is an autoimmune disorder which causes sort of intestinal tissue damage due to an autoimmune response to gluten. And can lead to problems with nutritional deficiency and nutrient absorption problems because of the damage to the gut, the lining of the gut. And actually, interestingly, it is considered to, in the general population, it is considered to affect 1%, so 1 in 100 people are thought to have celiac disease, but actually, unfortunately, diagnosis remains quite low, with only 30% of that 1% of the general population actually having a proper diagnosis. And some people with this, so and that 70% of people that are undiagnosed, some of those people do not actually have the classic IBS type symptoms, so the sort of the diarrhea, the weight loss, the fatigue, that sort of thing, the sort of the stomach upsets, but actually are much more likely to suffer from fatigue and anemia, and actually have no digestive problems at all, like no digestive complaints at all. So you may not even know that you don't fit into the classic mold of what somebody who has celiac disease you think is going to have. And it is now being sort of explored that this sort of undiagnosed and untreated celiac disease may actually be a possible cause of unexplained infertility in both men and women. And there's some research showing that the prevalence of celiac disease amongst women with unexplained infertility is actually 2.5 to 3% higher than the general population. So actually quite a marked, quite a marked increase, really. And then, I think the statistics is quite extraordinary, that there is also research to show that women with undiagnosed celiac disease are actually 9 times at higher risk of experiencing multiple miscarriage compared to those women who are have celiac disease but are being treated. So, I mean, that's quite a significant increase, really. So the condition celiac disease can be, it can't be cured, but it can be managed. by following a very strict gluten-free diet, and that's lifelong. And it is now thought that actually that women experiencing unexplained infertility or recurrent miscarriage should actually be screened for celiac disease. And really the first step I urge you is to go and speak to your GP, who, they start off with a blood test, and then they follow that up with a biopsy for official confirmation. So, and as a sort of a last caveat, especially in the case of women who, as young girls or teenagers experience delayed onset of their periods, when, if they were significantly later than their peers, then that can be a sign of something connected with something like celiac disease. So I would just urge you to, go and speak to your GP about that. And then moving on to the second autoimmune condition that I wanted to mention tonight, and some of you may have heard of this, but it's Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or essentially the autoimmune component of hypothyroidism. So a sluggish thyroid gland, but caused by the immune system attacking the cells in the thyroid. And then the body starts producing antibodies against the thyroid, and that can cause this sort of chronic, gradual loss of function. So there is evidence now that 1 in 3, or research to show that 1 in 3 women who are experiencing multiple miscarriage or recurrent miscarriage are actually testing positive for thyroid antibodies. But just to be clear, that the actual presence of the antibodies, the thyroid antibodies themselves, is not thought to be the sole cause of the miscarriage, but it's a part of a much bigger sort of autoimmune infertility picture that definitely needs investigating. And the 2 antibodies that are of particular sort of interest really are the thyroid peroxidase and the anti-thyroid globulin antibodies. And they are the main indicators of possible thyroid disease, and their appearance usually sort of comes before the development of thyroid disorders. So women with abnormal autoimmune issues going on are generally at higher risk of reproductive failure, so things like recurrent miscarriage, IVF failure, and implantation failure. And unfortunately, even if you've had a test, if you've had your thyroid tested, and you've been found to have a normal thyroid, the antibodies can still be present, and routinely the NHS is not testing for antibodies. So I would urge you again, if you've had sort of recurrent miscarriage or problems with IVF failure and things, then would be to go and speak to your GP about getting a thyroid blood test, but to actually make sure that the antibodies are being included. So it's not just the TSH or the free T4. Make sure your antibodies are being included as well. So how can nutritional therapy actually help offer support to people with this condition? And again, lifestyle is absolutely key. How much activity you're doing and how much stress you're under. Looking at ways to reduce stress. Obviously looking at your diets and making sure that you're eating a nutrient dense diet with plenty of healthy fats and lots of variety. An anti-inflammatory diet, once again. Reducing your environmental toxins, so your plastics and your chemicals that are found in so many of our household, like beauty products and cleaning products, all those sorts of things. And again, really sort of supporting your digestive function, supporting your gut health. So again, we want to be making sure that people are having a regular bowel movement to stop this sort of sluggishness in the bowel and this recycling of hormones and things. Okay, so How are we doing for time? Okay, so just sort of quickly, I just wanted to sort of run through another a gut health disorder that we see sort of fairly commonly, and that is dysbiosis. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the there's a lot now, even in the mainstream press, about the importance of the gut, the sort of the gut bacteria or the microbiome. And dysbiosis is actually an imbalance in the microbiome, and there's now so much research to really back up the idea that the microbiome is absolutely key for all areas of our health, not just our digestive health, but also our mood, our energy levels, our immune system, and also our reproductive system. So we want to be making sure that we have good gut health and nice sort of no overgrowth of harmful bacteria and things. So this lady came to see me. She was in her early 40s. She was having daily episodes of diarrhea, generalized aches and pains. She had also a history of endometriosis going back a number of years, but now was also finding that she was getting increasing sensitivities to food and to environmental allergies as well. She had been on the contraceptive pill for 10 years previously, due to obviously the very heavy, painful and irregular periods due to the endometriosis. And after coming off the pill, she had actually managed to fall pregnant, but she was now she wanted to try for a second child, and she had experienced a miscarriage in that period of trying. She'd also experienced this sort of feeling of burning pain at night. She'd wake up feeling absolutely exhausted, and now was having these daily episodes of diarrhea, which of course were significantly impacting on her sort of everyday life, really. And she was often feeling quite low. Her GP had tested her for celiac disease, which had come back negative. So how did we actually support her gut health? Well, to start with, we carried out a more comprehensive stool test, which actually showed that she had this dysbiosis, so she had this imbalance of her gut bacteria, and there was also presence of a parasite there, which is actually incredibly common with a lot of traveling and things that we do these days. It's really not an uncommon thing to have a parasite, and it can cause certain problems with sort of with the sort of the balance of the gut bacteria as well. So we sort of recommended a treatment plan, and we worked on a gut healing protocol. Again, anti-inflammatory diets, so reducing inflammation in the body, increased the amount of good bacteria that she was taking, and doing blood sugar balancing work and things. And again, just as important is looking at her lifestyle and reducing the amount of stress that she had, and really coming up with a bespoke supplement plan as well. And even within a few weeks, by the next time I saw her, her sort of digestive symptoms and general aches and pains had begun to improve. And interestingly, she also reported a marked improvement in her sort of food sensitivities and the allergies that she was experiencing. And just generally, she was feeling more positive and had more energy and things. So that was quite nice. Again, it's sort of a few months of work and things, but just making a few changes can really make a significant impact on some of these conditions, really, in terms of supporting them. So, okay, and then just getting on to the last sort of health condition, really, is sort of obesity and being overweight. And we are all regularly told, those of us who have been, for IVF treatment, will be told regularly that actually particularly being in the obese category, but certainly also being overweight is a risk factor for infertility. And this was actually the only real bit of health advice I got when I was embarking on IVF through the NHS, was to make sure that my BMI was in the normal range. They are very keen on that and you know, some clinics won't work with people who are in this obese category, just because there is an increased risk of IVF failure, really. So why does obesity actually cause problems with infertility? Well, the increased body weight and the fat tissue is associated with a hormone imbalance. Basically, it can affect ovulation, that you have a higher risk of miscarriage and decreased success rate with assisted conception. And it's, you know, the womb lining may be less receptive to the embryo being implanted due to sort of a hormone imbalance. And it is thought to affect egg and sperm quality. So basically the whole range of you know, fertility issues, really. So nutritional therapy, how can that actually help support weight loss? And you know, lots of people, that's, you know, they struggle with that, really. They've spent a number of years not really sure how to eat. We're often very afraid of eating fats, that sort of thing. You know, there's a lot of confusing information out there. But basically we would work on sort of blood sugar balancing, definitely want to be supporting reduction of insulin, so sort of reducing your carb intake, that sort of thing. Again, an anti-inflammatory diet, reducing the toxic load, again, so the sort of the plastics and the chemicals and things. Encouraging people to start doing daily activity. It doesn't, you know, it's not all about hitting the gym. It's actually about, you know, just generally being more active and moving more. All of those little changes can make a big difference. And actually sort of daily activity can also help balance insulin levels, which, you know, particularly if you are overweight or if you're struggling with PCOS, then that's actually really key. And you know, nutritional therapist is going to spend time looking at, you know, what are the obstacles for what have been the challenges in the past, what are the obstacles that are causing, you know, they're getting in the way of weight loss for this person. So, you know, there's just much more time really to sort of delve a bit deeper into some of these problems, really. And then just finally, as a quick aside, just the last case study is a lady who came to see me with a history of rheumatoid arthritis, so another autoimmune condition, and she wanted to lose weight as well. She was sort of struggling with low energy, and she'd had a previous history of being having problems conceiving, but she had gone through a successful IVF cycle sort of 2 years previously. Since then had found it difficult to lose the pregnancy weight, and she was now thinking about preparing for another IVF cycle in order to try and sort of have another child if they could. So really she wanted to, you know, obviously, you know, prepare for this cycle, lose the weight that she, you know, that she needed to, and just help support some of the you know, the inflammatory symptoms that she was having, and, you know, improve her energy levels and generally just feel better, basically. And she was, you know, she was also taking a sort of quite a combination of immunosuppressive drugs for her rheumatoid arthritis. So working with all of that, and, you know, we sort of reduce the inflammation in the body, doing sort of blood sugar balancing, reducing her toxic load, decreasing the amount of stress she was under, really sort of prioritizing time for herself, and, you know, just very slowly introducing more activity into her daily life. She kept a diary of the flare-ups that she was having with her rheumatoid arthritis, and if there were any association with any foods that she was eating. And we looked at things like her snacking, and we made simple changes to her sort of nutrition and her lifestyle, really. And over time, it really saw her energy levels increasing. Her the pain that she was feeling sort of gradually began to, you know, started to improve. And then really within 12 weeks, she had lost over a stone, and the weight is still coming off, you know, at a sustainable rate. So generally, she's feeling much better in herself, feeling much more like her old self, just generally more in control of her health, and much more positive about life. So that again was, you know, just goes to show that actually just making these small changes can make a big difference. Okay. And then just as a final thought, really, you know, it's a bit of a whirlwind through some of these conditions and things, and sort of explaining how nutritional therapy can help support some, you know, certain people that are on their fertility journey. But I wanted to stress, and I sort of said this at the, you know, during the presentation, that, you know, you must always look for a BANT registered nutritional therapist who is also regulated by the Complementary and Natural Healthcare Council. So if they are BANT registered, then you can be confident that they're properly trained, they're qualified, and they're insured. And they also abide by the CNHC's Code of Conduct. And as a BANT registered nutritional therapist myself, you know, we also have to do a minimum amount of continuing professional development each year. So, you know, we have to be keeping up with current research and things, and keeping our knowledge up to date. So just as a final thought, really, that, you know, as I said, there really is much more to sort of fertility nutrition than just eating, unfortunately, than just eating your five a day. And, you know, nutritional therapy really aims to dig deeper and look for underlying imbalances and causes, rather than just necessarily, you know, just dealing with symptoms. So every person has a unique set of challenges, and, you know, possible health imbalances, and also a family history as well. But just to finish on a you know, a positive note, just sort of 3 very simple things that you can do to sort of improve your you know, improve your diet and lifestyle, and really sort of give you the next step on your fertility journey, is really, I mean, very simple things like just making sure that you're, you know, really eating more vegetables. You know, aiming for colour and variety, really including your sort of your dark green leafies every day. Reducing your sugar intake is absolutely, you know, is absolutely vital. Sugar is a massive hormone disruptor. It's you know, associated with sort of weight gain and PCOS and things. So reducing that inflammation as well. And then finally, just doing something relaxing every day for yourself. So things like yoga, meditation, or even just as simple as going out for a walk in the park at lunchtime. You know, get away from your desk for 10 minutes a day, and just get outside and just have time away from your desk. I mean, just simple things like that can really sort of, you know, get you on the road to taking the next step, really. So okay, so just before we move on to questions, just to remind you that I am sending out, or Heather will send out, a fact sheet that sort of summarises everything I've spoken about. So, you know, to everybody who's present tonight, and if you're listening after the recording after the webinar is finished, then, you know, you can ask Heather to send you the fact sheet as well. So. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found that useful. It was a bit of a whirlwind tour, but I just wondered if anybody's got any questions, and I'm just going to go back to Heather now, and thank you very much. Okay.
Victoria, that was an absolutely amazing presentation. I can't believe how much you actually managed to cover in one session. And the case studies were really interesting, because I'm sure there were lots of people that were listening to those that were really relating to some of those symptoms.
Yeah.
We've actually got quite a few questions, so I'm going to fire on. Now, there was one that was submitted a few weeks back, so I'm going to ask you that one first, but I think you might answer that one quite quickly anyway. So this question that I received through by email from somebody was, is it better to be vegetarian or to eat lean red meat when you're trying to conceive?
Well, I think that, unfortunately, there's no sort of definitive answer on that as such. I think if you are vegetarian, obviously there are different types of being vegetarian. That some people are, you know, eating sort of eggs and things like that. some vegetarians do also eat fish, so it just depends on really the level of if you're a vegan or whatever. I would say that as absolutely key when you're when you're trying for a baby is to make sure that you've got enough protein. So whether that's animal form or plant form is absolutely key, that you're having some protein with every meal and every snack. In an ideal world, you would be including eggs and fish. Eggs are absolutely full of things like choline, a fantastic source of protein. Choline's good for sort of embryo brain development and those sorts of things. And obviously fish is full of omega-3s, which are the healthy fats that we need. Probably keeping your red meat down to a minimum, because for some people it can be quite inflammatory. Maybe sort of no more than once a week, that sort of thing. If you can include sort of white organic chicken, that sort of thing as well, then that's also a good source of protein. But there are good sources of plant proteins out there as well. And there is evidence to suggest that actually increasing your plant proteins, so things like beans and pulses and chickpeas and stuff, can actually help reduce ovulation disorders and things. So I think the key message is, whether you're vegetarian or whether you eat meat, is to make sure that you are eating enough protein, and ideally to be at least having eggs and fish within your diet. So that's sort of, it's not really a clear answer, but that's sort of that's really what I would recommend.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you. Let's have a look at some of the other questions. What's your view on low fat, or wait a minute, I've lost it. Sorry, it's disappeared. It will come back in a moment. Hang on a sec. Oh, what's your view on low fat or 0% fat products and the impact on fertility?
Okay, definite no. We want, if you're trying to conceive, you want to be eating full fat, things like yogurt, or if you are eating dairy, then you want to be eating the full fat version, and having things like nuts and seeds and oily fish and avocados and olive oil in your diet on a sort of a daily basis, really. We need fat to make cholesterol, which are the building blocks for all of the sex hormones. So if you're not having fat in your diet, then that can be slightly problematic. At the same time, as I've sort of explained, you've got to sort of weigh that up with if you need to lose weight for fertility, to get your BMI into the normal range, then you're going to need to look at other areas, and usually sugar is really the main area that can be problematic. But definitely don't want to be eating low fat. You don't have to eat massive portions of these things like the nuts and the seeds, but including some of those into your diet regularly is really, really important. And just as a final thing, often these sort of low fat products like the yogurts and things are absolutely full of sugar as well. So really, I would really stay clear of those.
Okay, there's another question which I'm going to ask quickly after that, which is, what's your view on Diet Coke and the impact?
No, definitely no. Got to get rid of that now, because you've got the combination of, you've got a lot of chemicals in there, you've got the sweeteners in there, and actually in some ways it works on even though it's not sugar, it's working on the same receptors in the brain. So insulin is still being produced. So unfortunately, Diet Coke has really got to go, and all fizzy drinks, to be honest. I mean, fizzy water once in a while is absolutely fine, but you just got to sort of get rid of things like Diet Coke and Coke and those sorts of things. I'm sorry, but
I think you covered in the last webinar as well that caffeine, just try and reduce your intake as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, caffeine free. So really sort of increasing your herbal teas, things like rooibos tea, dandelion coffee, but definitely, you start off by, if you are a big coffee and tea drinker, you want to be doing it gradually. Don't go cold turkey overnight, because you'll end up getting sort of withdrawal symptoms like headaches and fatigue and stuff. I mean, having the occasional decaf coffee is fine. but really, really sort of caffeine, unfortunately, is another one that ideally should certainly be significantly reduced, if not avoided. You know, and just remembering that it's not forever. You know, it's really just sort of giving. It can be very, very inflammatory, caffeine, and cause all sorts of hormone disruption and things. So I would really recommend trying to increase the amount of non-caffeinated teas and things that you're drinking, and you know, start reducing the amount of caffeine. Definitely.
Okay, sorry to throw these questions at you.
That's okay. I'm sorry to be so doom and gloom, but
no, not at all. But they're coming in at a rate of knots, and I'm trying to cover as much as I can. Okay, if you've only got a few weeks left before treatment, what changes can you make? So I think this is prioritizing which ones can be fitted in a few weeks.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the three that three simple changes that I mentioned at the end of the presentation were really, you know, you can, even from your, you know, if you haven't had dinner tonight, get your vegetable intake up. You know, try and aim for at least 7+ portions of vegetables a day. Keep your fruit to no more than 2 to 3 portions a day as well. Aim for colour and variety. You know, really, you can do a lot with that. And significantly reducing your sugar intake. And then, as I said, you know, really just trying to do something relaxing. And a simple thing that you can do if you've only got a few more weeks to go is trying to get your mindset in the right place as well. So I think I mentioned this in the last webinar, but there's a chap called Russell Davis who has a website called The Fertile Mind. He's a hypnotherapist that specialises in fertility, and you can download one of his hypnotherapy CDs or whatever you call them these days, and you can do a 10-minute sort of positive visualization every night before going to bed. And I think actually those sorts of things can be really important if you're about to embark on IVF. It's really sort of getting that positive mindset and embracing it. So really, you know, they're really 3 simple things that you can be doing, but or even just trying to do some meditation every day, you know, or getting out for a walk every day, just reducing your stress levels, because it can be a very you know, it can be a very anxious time before starting IVF. So, you know, I wish you luck, but just to know that even if you've only got a week before it, there are still things that you can do to try and improve your chances. So
now, if you don't want to go to the GP to get your blood test done on hormones, or are there sites that you can go to do this, or would you not recommend that if you don't want to get it done through your GP?
You can get these tests done privately. I would recommend that you work with a if you don't want to go to the GP, then I mean, ideally you go to the GP as a first port of call, but then if you feel like you've exhausted that avenue, then maybe seeking some sort of support from a nutritional therapist who can then guide you through which test to go for, and then help you with the analysis of the test. Because, you know, it's all very well getting these tests done and getting the information, but if you don't know what to do with that information, then, you know, they can, you know, the cost can rack up really. And I think that definitely you know, getting advice on the best tests to have done and getting support with those tests is key, really.
Thank you. Now, what level of, now don't laugh at my pronunciation here, Victoria, but what level of TPO would indicate Hashimotosis that you talked about?
Hashimoto's.
Yeah, that's the one.
I think the current thinking is that, you know, just the presence of you know, this sort of increased, I mean, I don't know the figures actually I haven't got the figures offhand, but, you know, a sort of an out of range increase would suggest that, you know, there is a possible Hashimoto's evidence. So you know, I think it's just the fact of realizing that actually you can be tested through the NHS and be found to have a normal thyroid function and still have you know, the antibodies present, you know, and that can be a risk factor. So
okay, thank you. Now we've still got a few more to do. What would you advise taking one of those probiotic drinks that most of society seems to drink these days? You know, like Actimel, gut health.
They're probably not the best. The best form of probiotic to be taking. Again, it's sort of supplementation is such an individual thing that I'm sort of a little bit reluctant to be suggesting, brands and things that I would be taking. But I think there are definitely better quality probiotics that can be taken than necessarily those sort of yogurt drinks and things. So I think probably again, if you wanted something, some sort of fermented foods might work. Things like kefir, having a bit of sauerkraut, sort of kimchi, that sort of thing, as opposed to sort of the mass-produced, Yakult and those sorts of Actimel and things like that. I think there are better ranges, really.
Okay, now this one says, I believe I eat well, but how can I test what my vitamin and mineral level is? How do I know if the prenatal vitamin is enough?
Well, yes, that's a very good question. Again, I would probably say that actually seeking some advice, really, and actually sort of seeing somebody that can help you to look at your diet and then help recommend, if you wanted to do sort of testing, there are plenty of private tests that can be done to look at health, vitamin and mineral deficiencies and things. But again, I would really recommend, rather than just sort of looking up online yourself and thinking, well, I'm going to do this one, actually getting the support to help you choose the test that you need. So somebody needs to look at your whole sort of, your current health and your previous history and things, and look at your fertility history and see what's been going on to sort of piece the puzzle together, really. And then from there, they can recommend the best test to be taking, and then give you the support to analysing the results and actually what do you do with those results, because it's all, as I said, it's all very well and good getting all this information, but if you don't know what to do with them, then it's a bit of a waste of time, really. So that would be my advice, really.
It is about the bigger picture, isn't it? It's not just about vitamin and mineral level.
No,
it's much wider.
I totally agree, and I also think that so much is placed on well, as long as we're taking a prenatal supplement, that's okay. But it's actually much more about food first, really, and are you nourishing your body properly? Supplementation is just that, is actually sort of as a supplement to what you're eating, not the sort of the main focus of everything, really. So that would be my advice, really.
Okay, now I think you might have sort of touched on this one already. So it says, which foods could be better for improving egg quality? Did you say earlier it's the proteins and the fats?
I think probably as a sort of an overall, again, it's sort of an overall picture. There's not just sort of one food in itself that if you eat that's going to be the thing that's going to improve your egg quality. It's a whole picture, unfortunately. So it's looking at all of the, what protein you're eating, your carbohydrate intake, what healthy fats you're eating, and then all of the other things like the stress that you have in your life, how well your gut's working, and just general things. Unfortunately it's a whole picture, but if you have enough time to sort of implement the changes of the whole picture, then that is going to have a knock-on effect to things like egg quality as well. So
okay, now I've got one attendee has given me lots and lots of questions in one box here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one that I don't think's been touched on at all today, which is, how many calories should I consume every day if I exercise for 4 hours a week, have a healthy BMI, and have a healthy BMI? So what would you say when you're trying to conceive the calorie intake should be?
Well, I mean, I personally don't work with calories. Okay. I think that actually that that is, that's sort of tied into the whole weight loss type thinking. I'm much more interested in what you actually, nourishing your body with. And, it's much more complicated than just, well, I'm just going to eat, because actually, 2,000 calories of sort of eating a load of cakes and things is not going to be the same equivalent of 2,000 calories of eating a plate of vegetables or whatever, so it's actually much more about the sort of the nutrient dense quality of the food rather than the actual calorie intake. I mean, saying that, obviously, if you are eating well and you're not sort of overeating, you're listening to your body about when you're hungry and when you're full, that sort of thing, then actually, ideally your weight should sort of maintain itself at its sort of natural level. So, I mean, sorry to not be able to answer that, exactly, but certainly if you're active and things in the day, then you are going to probably want to eat more than if you lead a more sedentary lifestyle. But I definitely would try and get out of the mindset of calorie control and thinking about weight loss is the absolute end all and be all of what food is for, because actually food is really for fuel and for nourishment and for keeping us in really good health. So
okay, now there's 3 questions left, so we can do one of them really, really quickly.
Okay.
And there's one that I want to leave for last. Now, one says, what about decaf tea? I assume that's the same as coffee, the answer for decaf tea?
Yes, I would definitely think about decaf tea. But just as a quick aside, for both coffee and tea, there are better quality ranges than others, and you have to look at the way that the process of decaffeination has been done. Some slightly cheaper brands probably are using chemicals to decaffeinate their tea and coffee. So you want to be looking for water filtrated or carbon dioxide processed decaffeination as opposed to the chemical one. A nice decaf tea is Clipper. That's a really nice one. It sort of, it sort of looks and tastes the same as normal tea. Probably not quite the strength of normal tea, but that's a good one to use.
Okay, I think I'm going to have to round this up because I've still got quite a lot to say, but there's one question that I do want to ask, which is any advice for men?
Yes, well, a lot of this same advice can be applicable to men. I think definitely sort of looking at stress levels, activity levels in men. There are a lot of men that are doing a lot of high intensity exercise, which is, not good news for sort of sperm production. Unfortunately, things like saunas, baths, anything that's going to overheat the testicles, that sort of thing. But generally the same guidelines. Good nutrition is good nutrition, and the same sorts of things are going to apply to men as well. But they do have an extra issue of, it's quite easy to damage sperm. So, just generally being, doing more relaxing things and less sort of, fewer marathons and extreme bike rides, that sort of thing. So just sort of in a quick nutshell, really.
That's really useful advice for men, I think. Now, we really went through those questions quickly. I apologise if we missed out your question, but we really went as quickly as we could and we covered as many as we could. The fact sheet that Victoria spoke about, I will send that out to everybody that's attending this live tonight. It will come early next week. If you're watching a recording of this webinar, please email heather@fertilitynetworkscotland.org and just request Victoria's fact sheet number 2. Okay, and I'll send that out to you. Thank you so much, Victoria, for supporting Fertility Network by giving up your time tonight. We do hope to have the recording available on YouTube in the next week or so. The next webinar that we're doing is on Tuesday, the 18th of June. Let me just double check that. Yeah, Tuesday, the 18th of June. We haven't got the details up on our website yet, but we hope to have them up soon. So keep an eye on the social media to hear all about that when it comes out. Now, we can only send you a direct email as a reminder about future webinars if you provide us with permission to do so. So if you want to give your consent to receive details of further webinars like this one tonight, then email me, heather@fertilitynetworkscotland.org, stating clearly that you'd like to receive a reminder for the TTC webinars, the Trying to Conceive webinars. We won't share your email address with any other organisation. We'll only use your personal details for the reasons stated. And we'll keep your data for the duration of the 2019 series, and it can be removed on request just by emailing me. Now, there's one more thing. Victoria's webinars are always really, really popular. And after the last one, I got lots of comments through. But because I didn't have consent to forward them on, I couldn't forward them directly, your emails directly onto Victoria. Lots of people wanted to send thank yous and said, you know, oh, this is really working for me, etc. So if you want to do that, please put in the email that you send me, I give consent for this to be passed on to Victoria, and I can just ping it on and forward it on to Victoria, and she can read those lovely messages for herself. Okay. I think that's all we've got time for. So I'm going to very quickly say another very sincere thank you to Victoria. You are a star, and your knowledge just astounds me. And thank you to everybody else for coming tonight and joining us and listening to this webinar. Please come and join us again at the next one on the 18th of June. Good night, Victoria.
Thanks, Heather. Good night.
Good night, everyone else. Bye now.